Welcome to F at the Time, I'm Martin Brown. This episode is all about computer games, as I speak to artist Coral Davies. She talks about how the PlayStation kickstarted her love of computer games, how she got into PC gaming, and how computer games influence her art. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, remember to subscribe and leave a review. Let's go. Coral.
Martin.
How are you?
Excited for this thrilling 45-minute conversation we're about to have.
As long as I've known you, you've been into gaming.
Yes.
When did that start?
When I was quite young and I was incredibly enamoured with my older brother, who's about 4.5 years older than me. And the first console that I can remember him playing, he must have had stuff before me, was a Sega Saturn, and he played Bubble Bobble on it, just the little Japanese. I don't know if they were dragons or dinosaurs. There was a little green one and a little blue one. I think it started life as an arcade game, and then it got moved onto the Sega Saturn. And they blew little bubbles to capture ghosts, and then you headbutt them, and they turn to fruit and stuff. And I was like, I want to play that. Obviously, I didn't sound like a sort of 40-year-old fisherwife, I hope, at that age. So he very graciously allowed me to play that with him, and that kind of ignited my love of computer games. And I think I was quite lucky because I didn't have cartridges or anything back when I started playing. It was discs.
So you never went through the whole Sega Mega Drive days?
No.
That's funny, because I think we are exactly the same age.
88.
There you go.
Twins, you.
Because I grew up on Sega Mega Drive.
I see. I didn't have that. I don't know whether it's so pull out the violins. I don't know if it's because I came from an impoverished background.
Me too. Thank you very much.
But I just don't. I don't remember my brother talking about cartridge games, but maybe he did, and stuff. It's just the Sega Saturn. Yes, it's the one that I remember, and then that made me hungry for more computer games. And when I was old enough to get my own, it was when the PlayStation had just come out, and I really wanted whatever the latest Sega console was, but they'd sold out and all they had was PlayStations. And my mum's the kind of person where it's like, you're getting what they've got or you're getting nothing. You know, like when you go into a cattery and it's like, all we have is the bold cat that spits, and she's like, it's that or no cat. How
often do you go to catteries?
We went to a cattery once and we ended up with a very angry cat because she took the attitude of it's that or nothing. So I got the PlayStation and I felt very smug because I was like, it's my console and I shall deem whether I share it with my older brother.
So what year was that? It's
the year that Final Fantasy VII came out, because I got it as a bundle. So that must have been like 1997, 1998? Yeah, and I got the PlayStation and I got Final Fantasy VII. And it was the worst experience of my life. I didn't play it for a year. Tried to play it once. Have you ever played Final Fantasy?
I'm not into Final Fantasy. I think I was too young to get it, or I don't know.
I mean, I would say yes. I probably as an 8-9-year-old girl, it probably was a bit too much for my squidgy little brain, and required too much planning and independent thought and understanding mechanics beyond you hit the A button. Yeah, I didn't play it for a year. My mom had to go out because I threw a tantrum and got Croc, which was far more on my level at that time.
That was a good game.
That was a good game. Whereas weirdly enough, my friends are actually playing Resident Evil 1. Or was it 2? You start and there's you're kind of in a car park or a road outside, and you're playing the dude and you have to get into the police station.
That's Resident Evil 2.
Yes. I tried to play it once and all I could do was get him to moonwalk into the fire and he died. So, as you can see, I wasn't a very competent gamer.
Resident Evil 1 is always linked to the band The Cars, the Irish band The Cars.
How?
Because it was so terrifying for me and my brother and my friends playing it that we'd put The Cars on quite quietly in the background. So anytime I hear The Cars, I think, oh, Resident Evil.
It's like a trigger, like a Vietnam moment. Oh wow. Okay. Yeah. No, I never played any music to mask any of the sounds. So did you ever play like Crash Bandicoot?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Oh, I love that. I like that little like fox thing, and weirdly, because I was a child, I can admit it. Like he was kind of like my first computer game crush, like the muscly fox in the denim pants.
This is a whole different side of you, Coral. Are you openly admitting that you're a furry now? Is that?
No, thank God, no. But I was just like, oh, he's so cool. Especially when he got the mask on and everything. And yeah, I was like, oh man, I miss platform games. I swear you don't really get decent platform games anymore, apart from, is it Little World?
It's a style that's gone out of fashion a little bit.
Did you ever play Spyro?
No, I didn't.
Wow!
I didn't, but I know somebody that was obsessed with it.
Absolutely. And that was another gaming crush. I was like, if I was a dragon, I would marry Spyro. I was a very sad, friendless little child.
You got really into the way these characters looked.
Yeah, oh my God. I used to love drawing them and everything. And yeah, I think I drove my brother insane because I used to like draw all of his birthday cards and Christmas cards and stuff, and it would have all these like gaming characters on them. Like one year, I played like a game called Grandia, which I think was on. It was definitely on PlayStation. I played the first one. I think the first one was on the PS1 and the second one was on PS2. And Grandia, nobody ever seems to remember what it is. But it was kind of another one of those sort of like anime-inspired dystopian world. But this was the first one where I'd seen the little like bobble-headed sort of, construction of characters. So like FF9 had that as well, where they have like tiny little baby bodies and then they have big bobble heads.
Like you're saying, drawing there, you are an artist. Has it influenced your art?
Gaming, kind of along with comic books and movies and stuff, always like this kind of stuff that I'm attracted to is very fantastical, and you'd never catch me playing like Call of Duty or anything like that, because I want stuff set in a world that isn't our own, or is at least a messed up version of our stuff, and it kind of always has like this. It's very aesthetically pleasing and detailed and intricate, and that's the kind of stuff that I like to draw. Mainly because I think the more details you add, the more you might mask any errors you've made in your drawing, where you're like, oh, I've kind of screwed up the perspective, but if I give them a jazzy coat, nobody will ever know.
That's interesting though. So games based in like reality, basically, yeah. like Call of Duty or anything that you're not a fan of.
So anything that's first person gives me travel sickness, so I don't play it. And then anything that's set in sort of our kind of reality, though not many computer games are, because that's not very interesting. But war games and stuff like that it doesn't appeal to me. I'm much more for like stuff like Witcher, which is like a massive story-led game, but you are focusing on one character, and you do need to be able to like fight and learn their techniques and build their armor up and all the rest of it. But it's more about being immersed in the world as opposed to like fulfilling objectives.
Do you still play your old PlayStation? Do you still have your old PlayStation?
It's in a box in the attic. Bless her. I know. When we moved into the house, we were like, we're going to have a dedicated gaming room and we're going to put all our consoles everywhere. And then we just never did. But, I cheated. And what I did was I just downloaded them off of the PlayStation Store onto my PS4, which is on its last legs. And thank God you can download stuff onto it, because it just does not accept anything in its disk drive anymore, which sounds like a perverse euphemism. But it's not having it. You put something in and it spits it back out, and it's like, no, thank you. So I downloaded like Croc and Spyro and FF7, FF8, and a bunch of other things. And Scott just downloaded like Tony Hawk Pro Skater and all of that. So I'm having my nostalgia through that. Though I would think my brick of a PlayStation probably would play. I've also got my brother's Sega Saturn as well up in the attic.
By the sounds of it, you weren't a Nintendo person.
No.
I missed out on the Nintendo thing altogether as well, and so many people are just obsessed with the Nintendo. And now I want an N64 just to see what the fuss was about. So I'm going to go back and get one, I think.
We'll go back in time, or...
Well, once I figure out time travel, yes, then I'm going to go back. No, I'm going to look for an N64 just to see what the fuss is about. Do you ever think about going back and playing older consoles?
No. Because, one, I don't know, I have this weird kind of like, once I pin my flag to something, I'm like, I'm with you forever until we're all dead. Like people who pick a football team, I was like, I've picked PlayStation and I shall never betray them. And I get quite defensive as well, like completely irrationally. So you know when they did like the PlayStation 5 reveal, and then they did whatever the hell the latest Xbox thing is,
Series X.
And everyone was slagging off the PlayStation 5 and how it looked. And it made me really angry and defensive. And, like, I found myself just going on, like, Facebook and forums being like,
You got into internet fights.
Yeah, because they were like, I don't know, they said it looked like a fan drive or something. And I was like, how dare you? But yeah, so I'm weirdly loyal to the PlayStation. And then the only other thing I play is my PC. Though I did once skip away from the PlayStation and got an Xbox 360.
You cheated on the PlayStation.
I cheated, but it was because they did that limited edition R2-D2 skin. And I was like, oh boy, I'm a loser. I need that. And when you push the little button, it made the... that sounds like a Murloc from World of Warcraft, but it made the R2-D2 wiggly thing, and the controller was gold like C-3PO, and
These are all excuses for your wandering eyes.
I don't think I have actually bought any games for it.
You just switched it off and switched it on and switched it off.
Yeah, and then got told off by my friend from taking it out of the box and was like, it could be worth thousands by now. And I was like, no, I paid money just so I could hear it make noises. But yeah, so no, PlayStation, never had any interest in Nintendo, never really had any interest in like the other Microsoft products, which is weird because I did really like Pokemon.
So that's the thing. I think a lot of people turn to Nintendo because of Pokemon. I never had one, and I didn't have a Game Boy, I didn't have an N64, I didn't have a SNES, anything like that. And I just think it's odd that like throughout time there's always been basically a divide between gamers. And like you're saying, you're fighting with people on the internet to this day, as somebody born in 1988. That is...
I know, it's wild. Like all the best games, in my opinion, nowadays team up as exclusive releases, usually with the latest PlayStation consoles. And like, yeah, because I never had the Nintendo or anything, I didn't play Sonic, I didn't play Mario, which is weird. Again, platform games should have appealed to me. But like my mom was like, oh, you've got this console and that's it. This is the only console you're gonna have for like 10 years, so get your money's worth. And I'm like, no, I made the right choice. I don't regret, and I don't want to go back and discover what I missed out on. I didn't even have my own Game Boy. I just, like, when my brother stopped playing his Game Boy, I pinched that, and that's when I played Pokemon. My mum was like, pick wisely. It's like that moment, like with Gandalf or something, like where a wizard is like, you have two choices, pick wisely and reap the consequences of your actions. And it was like my sole entertainment. And I was, even though I was a kid, I was also calculating it in terms of like, right, well, what consoles do my friends have? And all my friends had the PlayStation. And I was like, well, you know, even though actually I did want the latest Nintendo, and serendipitously ended up with the PlayStation. The reason I wanted the Nintendo was because they all had the PlayStation. So I was like, I'm going to be contrary to them. But in the end, it worked out in my favour because then, me and my friends could swap games, which was like super smart because none of us had like 2 buttons to rub together. So each person would get a different game for their birthday or Christmas, and we'd all discuss it, and then that way we could play our games and then swap them around like a little library system. So you get more bang for your buck.
That's almost a lost art now.
It's true. Or getting people to come over and play the game with you. Like, you know, remember when you had to have your controller attached to the console? So you're both sitting there and you've got your parents going, your eyes are going to go square if you sit that close to the TV. And I don't know about you, but I always had my time rationed on the console because my mom was convinced, one, it was making me a deviant.
Which, as we have discussed previously, it might have been.
Maybe I told her I fancied the fox and denim shorts, and she was like, oh, my child needs to be exercised. And 2, she was like, oh, it's bad for you. You need to get out there and play with other kids and experience the world. And also, it did actually make me very angry. I won't lie. Like, the frustrations in games did turn me into a brat. Dead or alive, I remember my mom banned me from the console for like a whole weekend because I lost a fight and like smashed my controller into a mirror and just like shattered it in a fit of rage. And my mom was like, why have you done this? And I was like, I'm trying to get the bunny outfit. And she was like, right, that's enough.
So you're a rage quitter.
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah. Scott can tell you some stories. He bought me this Christmas gone Ghost of Tsushima, which is an absolutely breathtaking game. So beautiful. But some of the fights require a lot of coordination, and I am very impatient. And my brain moves faster than my thumbs. I was just... There's like a couple of fights where you go like one-on-one with other samurai. And one was beating me. And I was just screaming and screaming and screaming. And Scott was like, this is psychotic. You're 32. It's a game. And I was just like... Rah! And I once smashed a controller... when I was playing the it was when Tomb Raider kind of got rebooted.
Yeah.
And it kind of went back to young Tomb Raider, and there was like it's where she's on like a boat and it crashes and she ends up on an island. And so I played that, and I got to a point in that game where I think you're like on this raised platform. You basically have to headshot your way through them to get out of this. And I died something like 35 times. And I was like, well, I suppose you just want to stay dead then, don't you, you dumb bitch? And then ejected the disc, snapped it, and that was the end of the game.
What? You snapped the disc?
Yeah. I'm proper rage. I'm quite bad with computer games. My mum was right. I mean, I didn't break anything as a kid because I think my mum would have beaten me into an early grave. But... when it came to a point that I was paying for my own things, I was like, I'm just hurting myself at this point. So if I want to snap in half... The only game I've never got like really angry at is World of Warcraft, which I played on my PC. Which is surprising because I only ever played on like cheap keyboards, like $7.99 keyboards, and it would have been so satisfying just to pick one up and just smash it and have all the keys go everywhere. But I think I couldn't bear the idea of then having to slowly get down on like my hands and knees, retrieve the keys, rebuild the keyboard. Because stuff like WoW, I was playing against other people, actual other people. And even when you were coming up against like bosses and like computer generated characters, because it was a lot of it was all about teamwork, it was like, oh, it's, you know, it's human error and I could accept that, but when I was play against stuff that's just a computer program and I lose because I've made a mistake, I'm very angry at myself, and then I just go into like a frenzy.
World of Warcraft. It's on PC.
Yes.
That's a whole genre of gaming that I'm not a part of.
You're not a PC gamer?
Never done it. Never done it. The closest I ever got to PC gaming was playing, and I'm sure you've probably never played this, Championship Manager or Football Manager. PC gaming.
Yeah.
When did you get into that?
Again, through my brother. He was a good big brother. He still is a good big brother. And so my mum got this desktop computer, and my brother bought Baldur's Gate and started playing it, and I was like, what's that? Again, back to my 40-year-old official wife, what's that? And he was like, oh, it's an RPG. Like, you've never sort of, well, different to the kind of RPGs that you were getting on the PlayStation, and obviously like way more basic graphics and stuff. And it was the first time I was introduced to playing with a keyboard and a mouse, and I was like mind blown. And so he kind of fell in love with PCs, so that's what he poured his money into, and he learned how to build them. I must have been like university age at that point, 18. Like still trudging through the mists of my past. And he introduced me to that, and I was like, oh, brilliant. This is way better than going to university. Yeah. I think I'll play this. And it was back when it was the original WoW, which is now known as Vanilla, but it's the original game where it was 0 to 60, and it was the first Morpog that I'd ever played. So that was the multi-online RPG gaming, bloody pling plonk plonk. And again, you got to roll your cards. So it reminded me of Dungeons and Dragons, and I was like, oh, I can be whatever I want to be. And of course, I was like, I'm going to be a human girl, warrior, something I could be in the real world. And so he played that, and I just kind of got swept up in the majesty of what is World of Warcraft, and actually abandoned my console for like 5 years. Didn't get a PS3. That's the best way I can describe it. I went from PS2 to PS4.
I am like this, and I don't know if you are. Are you 100% completist in games? Like, if you're playing a game, even if it's terrible, I still have to 100% it. Just say, I'm done. It's over with. I
am like that to a certain extent. So a good example would be, again, going back to Final Fantasy. So Final Fantasy 9. They had these like 100 locations of the Chocobo, magical Puffland, blah, blah. And I found 99 of them, and it was telling me the last one was in this area, and I spent like 4 hours painstakingly going over the area pixel by pixel, and it never revealed itself. So in a fit of rage, I never played that again. And then like 10 years later, my now husband was like, oh yeah, that's because that final one doesn't reveal itself until you get a certain way through the game. And he was like, and you never got that far because you rage quit because you're an idiot. Like, scream.
Games now are digital mainly. What's your opinion? Do you still buy physical copies of games, or do you download?
Again, I'm an old bastard and still don't trust modern day technology, because I'm like, oh, what if it's like, decides that they don't want to host that game anymore and it disappears from my account, or something glitches and it gets lost. Yeah,
because you're effectively renting it rather than owning it anymore.
Well, that's it. Like, I used to have a Kindle, and I remember that when it was like, there was a bit of drama because a load of people had bought books on it, and then they were like, oh yeah, we just decided we didn't want those in our library anymore, and so they just disappeared from people's Kindles. And games are really expensive, and it annoys me because I'm like, oh, okay, well, if I don't get a physical copy, can it be a bit cheaper? And like, usually it's actually cheaper to wait for a physical copy to go on sale.
It also stops piracy.
Oh, I don't care about piracy. Do you know what? I'll say it here. Those companies got enough money who basically goes, here's the game, but then 95% of it is DLC that you have to pay for.
It's insane.
It is completely bananas. It drives me nuts. I think, if I was an X-Men, my special powers would be stealing the bones of people who design games that cannot be played to any degree without DLC.
Are these people alive when you're stealing their bones?
Yeah.
So it's just like, I've lost an arm.
Just all of the bones.
I've lost
just
a tibia.
Straight down.
So it's not just one bone. It's
all
okay.
of them. All of them. Gone.
So
And they have to go back into the sea to live with the other jellyfish. It needs to be as much punishment in that flash of rage because I'm not vindictive. I'm just a hothead. If I took one bone from them, then I'd feel guilty. So I have to take them all at once, and then there's no chance of feeling bad. But no. It does drive me nuts when there's like so much DLC that you need to make games playable, or to even, considering lots of games now are multiplayer games which lots of people can access, and it's unfair putting the players on different levels. Like, it's fine to compete with other players in terms of like skill, but if it's just like they've got more money than me to buy a load of downloadable stuff, then that's just nonsense. I feel like you can't cheat as well. So like old school games and stuff, you could cheat. There were ways to like cheat through walls because of the old school coding. I remember as well, like Pokemon, you could like max there was a way to get Mew, and then there was a way of like maxing all your Pokemon to like 999, but you had to remember not to press too many times on the button that you used to cheat it, because otherwise the computer would just reset it and you'd get a Pokemon that was like no level. But yeah, there were ways of like cheating and stuff, and I feel like you can't do that with modern computer games anymore. Like, nobody shares cheats. Maybe there are cheats, but nobody shares them with me.
It was before the internet.
Yeah.
So you had to hear about it either through a magazine, which is one, or through a friend at schools, and like you'd write it down, the code or something, and you've got to press up, down, left, right, whatever. And it was, you don't get that anymore. Now you just Google it.
I know. So I would just write my own guides as I was going through it. I would have binders, and like you created your own guides, and then you use that as currency with your friends who are playing the game, who were like, I'm stuck at this bit, and you're like, okay, I'll tell you this, but then what are you going to tell me about this other game? And it would be like an exchange of information. So
from the PlayStation 1, you then got PlayStation 2. What are your thoughts of the PlayStation 2? Because I believe it's the highest selling games console of all time.
So it's weird, I don't really remember the PlayStation 2 as well. And I don't know if it's because then I'd kind of got into high school and I wasn't playing it as much. Like, my kind of gaming part of my life was back when I was very young, sort of under the age of 10. And then I didn't really kind of get back into gaming again until I was sort of 18. I did have a PlayStation 2, and I definitely played things like Silent Hill and the Resident Evil, and I was kind of playing like a bunch of horror games on it, and that's kind of like when I moved beyond the genres of platform games and just RPGs, was kind of like horrors, but they still like heavy in storylines. They had more action and more fighting and stuff, but they still had that kind of like really solid storyline, and I like kind of fallen in love with horror movies and like scary books and comics and stuff. So for me, PlayStation 2 is when I kind of like started playing scary games.
Horror games just took off.
Yeah.
To this day, I think, like, I love them. And I don't need the cores anymore.
That's good. I mean, whereas I have now become a complete... I cannot cannot play scary games anymore. I think they've become too scary. So like, you know, back in the day, there was still just enough pixels that it wasn't going to haunt you. And like Nemesis had a dumb face and, you know. But now, like, so they kind of like, it's really fashionable for them to go back and like reversion all the old games and give them all modern classic, give all the classic games sort of modern graphics and stuff. And we got Resident 2 for like the upgraded version. And oh my God, that was terrifying. It was genuinely fear-inducing. You know, that kind of like, again, I still don't think they do it. That kind of, you remember on the screen, it would be like, turn your light down until you can barely see the symbol, and you're like, shh. I would just like whack it up until it was like super bright and there was no dark corners anywhere. But now it's like the it's so realistic, and I think as well like the soundscaping and, you know, the they've just become more sophisticated. It's random encounters, and like you can walk down a corridor 100 times and you will experience it in 100 different ways, unless it's like a specific part of the plot line where it's like, okay, Nemesis is going to smash through this wall because he has to smash through this wall. But all the other kind of like random monsters are on this sort of random encounter pattern, whereas Resident Evil, the original ones, you'd be like, okay, zombie's going to come through that window. I know I'm going to run along the wall, whereas now it's like, yeah. Even like the Arkham Asylum game, the one, there was that, you know, that bit where you go down into like the sewers and is it Croc?
Yes, Croc.
Squeaky bum time. Honestly, that kind of like tiptoeing over the wooden planks and the thing in the water,
and see the ripples in the water,
and I'd frighten myself. Even though it's like, I am the knight, but also I am very scared. The next game I have my eye on is coming from a Chinese game producer, and it's the story of Monkey, the god, trickster god, and you get to play as Monkey, and you're going through this incredible, like, I watched some of the sort of like previews and stuff, and the fights are insane. Like, there's this preview of it where so Monkey has a staff and he's fighting this like thunder dragon, and the dragon sort of like electrocutes the water, and you have to tap on your staff and it raises you out of the sky, and it looks really fantastical. That looks so incredible, and I'm like, right, when that comes out, that's when I'm going to get the PlayStation 5, and that's going to be the game I get with it.
Shocking, you are female. And you're a gamer.
So please that you don't.
There's very odd sexism for women who like playing games.
Well, I think my opinion of all sexism is bad. For me personally, I haven't really experienced sexism as a gamer. But then again, I don't think I was playing at the right points in my life or in the right forums as well. So the kind of games that I was playing, those sort of RPGs where you were isolated on your own console, so you weren't interacting with other people. And then when I moved into things like WoW, no offense, but there's quite a few men on the internet playing games who are like, "You're a real girl," and white knight you, and are like, "Oh, I'll help you with all the quests and any assistance you need, and do you need gold?" And, you know, witnessing it and seeing like the vitriol, the sexist, the violent sexist language that people use, you know, as a confessed hothead, I never got angry at other players. Maybe a few times in WoW when they weren't doing the right thing, standing in the fire. Standing in the fire does make me quite angry. But I never really got angry at other players. I got angry at the computer game and the NPCs and the pixels, but I never got angry at other people. And obviously being a girl, like, I'm just kind of like, and, you know, I would never say to a guy, "Oh, I don't think you should be engaging in this activity, and this isn't the realm for you. And it's sad. It does make me sad, but I think like I shielded myself from it because I don't really go on those forums, and I don't play the kind of games that a certain type of man who is a gamer seems to be incredibly protective of like, this is for boys. And it's always the weirdest games, like Mario. Like, really? You want a white knight for Mario? The plumber? Like, okay, cool, fine. But yeah, it's sad, but I think it's just like anything, that you just need to get more women in the industry, and the industry just needs to get more diverse as well. I'd say it's everything as well, like the reaction to The Last of Us 2 and people being so angry about Ellie being, you know, revealed as gay. There was a part of the community that was so angry that they weren't getting to play as Joe, and they were having to play as this girl, and then the girl was a lesbian, and then she had to fight a muscly girl, and then you had to play the muscly girl, and it's like, oh, dude, man, you know, like you used to play a Italian plumber, like headbutting mushrooms, like, you know, who cares?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's sad, but it's changing, and I think, you know, it's like anything, without sounding cynical, money is power. And, you know, companies are like, well, if women want to play games, which they do, because we've noticed that they want to play games, hey, we'll change the product to be more appealing to them because money.
Which it all comes back to spending your money on your PlayStation 1.
I know. It's weird to think as a child I could afford to buy a console, but as an adult, it's got to be a considered decision.
And on that note, Coral, where can people find you on the internet, and where can they see your amazing artwork?
Instagram at tattooed.reef.artworks if you'd like to see some pictures.
Coral, thank you very much for coming on F at the Time.
No worries, thank you very much for having me on. It's been a blast.
Thanks again to Coral for speaking to me. Don't forget to follow F at the Time on Instagram and Twitter at F at the Time. And if you're feeling generous, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and subscribe on YouTube. Until next time, catch you later.